Is Eric and Amanda Rose, and they were missionaries to Guatemala. How long ago was that? 2018. They just came back from there. And they have a ministry that they have started up with a group of people, and it is entitled Daniel 12:3, which was our text for the service today. And so I'm going to turn the time over to them and let them share some stories with you and whatever is on their hearts. And so I know that we will be blessed this morning.
Happy Sabbath. That was a great special music by the girls because it goes along so well with what we have to share, because our testimony has a great power to help others. So I hope you're blessed by what we have to share. Part of it's testimony and part of it's kind of about our soul winning team. But my wife Amanda is going to share with you about our time in Guatemala. But I want to share a verse with you first, though. Proverbs 29:18 says, "Where there is no vision, people perish." Has anyone ever felt like that they didn't have a vision for their life, or didn't really feel like they were really accomplishing too much or something like that? Well, the great thing is that Jesus Christ is the answer to every one of us, and it's not just some theoretical thing that might never happen. It can happen for all of us, starting whenever we choose. Anyways, but it's really beautiful. I think you'll be blessed by it. And Amanda will share now about time in Guatemala.
You have a clicker thing?
Sure.
Okay. It's so nice to be here at your church. I love that it's so bright. It's bright with sunshine, but also the people. You feel very welcome here. So, as I shared with the children's story, we were living in Oklahoma, and God put it on our hearts to go to Guatemala as missionaries. And I won't get into the details of everything. It'll just be kind of a summary of our experience there. But we knew someone from Guatemala that was living in the U.S., and that was part of why we chose Guatemala. And the Lord just put this on the burden on our hearts. And it was interesting because we were living on 10 acres of beautiful land in Oklahoma, and we just put our heart and soul into that place. It was like an off-grid living experience that we'd had, and we thought we'd live there till Jesus came or till we died. We just really loved that place. But as God was just working on our hearts, both Eric and I, we just felt, just like God did with our son, just you can leave that stuff. We just felt like God's kind of severing our hearts from what we held very dear. Not that we didn't like it, but that we just had that burden to go, and it was okay to leave and our place and stuff. Anyway, so we went. We'd never been to Guatemala before. We figured we weren't going there just because it was a great place to go. We were going there to be missionaries, so it didn't really matter what we found, kind of. So we went. Our son was 3, and our daughter was born 3 months before we left to go to Guatemala. And there was a real miracle because she had a surgery right before we left, actually. So it was the timing was. God worked that out for us because we would have been there earlier. Anyway, so we went, and if you want to go to the next slide. Oh, I forgot. That's my job. This one? This one? Okay. So that's a picture of Eric and our son Kent in Oklahoma. We had a fig nursery. And our plan was to have a fig nursery in Guatemala. Eric went through the process to import the figs so that we could have a means of support there for our family. Well, we didn't realize that we actually couldn't work in Guatemala because we weren't residents. We were a little bit ignorant on some things. So that actually didn't end up working out. But that was our plan, was to go and to be self-sufficient, and so we wouldn't have to depend on donations. We sold everything, we packed up, and we moved. We stayed with a family of our friend for the first while we were there, and really picked up on learning Spanish. And then we were able to buy our own piece of property outside of a Mayan village, Nuevo Amanecer, which means new dawn. And we built a home there. That was actually our shed. We built real quick, and we lived in it while we built our home. It's a beautiful, beautiful place, tropical, very hot. The people, this shows a little bit of the conditions. It's very muddy, as you can see. Your boots, you'll easily get your boots stuck in the mud, and you'll be stepping in mud with your socks. Anyway, so the people are very poor. They eat tortillas mostly, not much else. The soil is not very fertile. It is in some places, but not where we were. It's just a real hard grind for the people. They grow their own food, but with the soil the way it is, it's not very productive. So they mainly eat tortillas 3 times a day. Occasionally they have beans. Occasionally they'll have something else, but it's quite an impoverished diet. Their teeth are very poor. They're fearful. They have superstitions. They're afraid of the hospital. There is some Christian, there's a lot of Catholic churches and Protestant churches, so there's a mix, but they also have a lot of their old, like Mayan superstitions and witchcraft mixed in. I'll go back here. So when we first arrived there, the people were very suspicious of us. We actually purchased property from someone who was trying to work on making a dam in their river, which they were very against. We didn't know anything about it, but they thought that we were there to convince them to put in the dam. So they were very suspicious of us. But we just started to do what we could to make friends with them. And it didn't take very long to where, I felt like it. We became good friends with them. Eric did a lot of distributing literature and also worked on getting things translated into their language, because the people in our village didn't speak Spanish. They spoke the Mayan Kaqchi language, and there are over 1 million people that speak their language, not very many Adventists among them. So he did that with the literature. We had people in our homes for cooking classes and health lectures, and it would be translated. We would speak Spanish, and then it would be translated into Kaqchi. And we had a widow program. Don't have a picture of that, but
it's the next slide. But that's more recent. But.
Okay. Well, anyway, like I said, it's very poor. So the widows, we would have them come once a month, and we would give them beans and some soap and oats and different things that they really probably wouldn't get if we didn't give it to them. And that really also helped to show the people that we were really wanting to help them, and people began to trust us a lot more. We did a program, well, not a program, but we were experimenting with agriculture on our land to try to see if there was something we could help them in that direction. We would, very soon, it was like most days we'd have many visitors at our home. People would come selling bananas or selling something or looking for work or with a medical need. And so because so many people were just coming to us and interacting with us, we were just really becoming kind of integrated in the area, and people knew who we were. So it was a really beautiful thing, a very beautiful experience for us. And we were there, altogether 2.5 years. But my husband actually became very sick while we were there. And so it was gradually getting worse and worse to the point where we realized that we really needed to leave. And it was really heartbreaking for us. We had grown very close to the people, especially our translator. He had been, him and his siblings had been raised like orphans. They just kind of grew up on their own. Anyway, we'd grown very close to them, and he was our translator. And telling him that we had to go, that we had to leave, it was really hard. But anyway, it just made us want to do more for them from here once we were gone. So after we left, we really had a dream to get a radio program in their language, because we realized that the people didn't read much. So that was a real dream of ours. I remember speaking actually with the Cherneys about that some time ago. We were dreaming about if only we could have a radio there, and it seemed like such a huge, impossible dream. I think it was on a walk with them actually that I was saying, like, it has to happen because they need it. And so we were praying about it. And we were so thrilled to find out a couple months after it happened that the Adventist church in Guatemala actually purchased a radio station for these Quechua people, specifically for their language. So we were thrilled, and we got in contact with the radio program and found out that they didn't actually have much material in the language. So that's where we were able to help hiring translators to get material for the radio. So I think that's where I stop. There's another group in Guatemala that's part of Daniel 12:3, part of them. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay. Yeah, wow. So I'm going to share a little bit of kind of my side of the story, and then we'll go into more about our team currently. But you can imagine that having sold everything in the United States and moving to this third world country, buying property after a while searching for property, setting up a home on top of a hilltop, going through all that, and then coming back to the United States in bad health, you can imagine that my vision perished. So, because that's what I lived for. I lived every day, talking to these Mayan people, and it was so interesting to think of ways to help them, whether it was through agriculture or helping the widows or learning the language. I mean, everything was interesting and great. And over there, everyone thought that we were, I should probably put this down. Everyone thought that we were, wealthy, and they came to us asking advice all the time. And then coming back to America, we didn't even know where to go. We didn't have our property anymore. And so it was the complete opposite, basically. It was, we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know where we were going. And I had bad health. I had like this chronic fatigue where it started in Guatemala, where I would go on even just a simple trip. I would have to walk around. And we lived like half an hour from the nearest road by walking through the mud, right? You guys saw the mud? So it wouldn't be physically taxing for someone that was in good health. But I would sometimes come home and I'd have to lay in bed for 2 days to try to recover. And so we knew there was something dreadfully wrong, but we didn't know what. And so actually to this day, we don't really know what happened. But so, we sold our property, and we took a big loss financially. And so when we came back to America, we really couldn't buy another property, and we ended up going back to southeast Oklahoma, which was where we had lived before we went to Guatemala. And they say there's more bears than people in that county. But what they didn't have was work. There was almost no economic activity going on there except for logging. Well, if anyone knows anything about logging, it's something that someone with chronic fatigue shouldn't even think about. Well, I love kind of hard outdoor work, and so partially out of desperation and partially out of my love for that kind of work, I got into that kind of work. And in order to try to work harder and, keep my family, supported, I started eating food that I really shouldn't have. And I had more energy, but it wasn't good for my long-term health. And right about when COVID came, my health just crashed. And I was in the hospital for 12 days. And, when I got out, everyone said, you need to do something different. There's no way you can go back to logging, and I knew it, And so we moved across the country out to California, which was something we never wanted to do. And it things got worse instead of better. I went out to do a job that I thought that I could do and support my family with, and I just flunked out. Like, have you ever flunked a test? Well, I flunked the job. I couldn't do it, and I physically was so drained. I just remember I even just laid on the floor for a little while. I was just so exhausted, and then got really stressed out because here we had moved from a rural, kind of low-cost environment in Oklahoma to Northern California where it's really expensive and you have to really make sure that, you have everything together. And I didn't. And so I gradually, I was able to find work, but it wasn't enough to, support a family in Northern California. I mean, it paid okay, especially like for around here. But anyways, so I gradually just sunk lower and lower into a depression. And I really can say that I gave up hope a long time ago in that time. And so, I mean, it may be hard to relate with, but that's the case. That was what happened with me. And I would pray to the Lord, but I couldn't see any way out of either my health situation, my financial situation, or my spiritual situation. I didn't have any good ideas. And it was like when I tried to come up with some way to better the situation, it just got blocked. And, needless to say, I was very, very discouraged. And one day, though, I remembered this quote, and I'm going to put this up here. It says here, "It would be well for us to spend a thoughtful hour each day in contemplation of the life of Christ. We should take it point by point and let the imagination grasp each scene, especially the closing ones. As we thus dwell upon his great sacrifice for us, our confidence in him will be more constant, our love will be quickened, and we will be more deeply imbued with his Spirit. If we would be saved at last, we must learn the lesson of penitence and humiliation at the foot of the cross." Well, I had known that quote for a long time. You've probably heard it before too. But I had never felt like I had time to do anything like that. Well, at this point in my life, I was desperate. And I especially noticed that part of the quote that said, "if we would be saved at last." And I thought, wow, I've been a Christian for a long time. But I want to be saved at last. I don't want to be just here with God, fall away, come back. I didn't want anything like that. And I thought, okay, I'm going to try this. I have nothing to lose, right? So in my room, I started spending an hour meditating on the life of Christ. And I took it point by point, just like the quote says. I thought about his childhood, his temptation, his miracles, his teachings, his death, his resurrection. And right from the first, I would say that there was like a crack in my dark room. Not that my room was dark, but the room of my mind was dark. And it was like the crack opened and light came in. And every day it was like the crack grew bigger, and I never like backslid. It was like every day was better than the last. And I was like, I think this is a permanent cure. So, oh man, I was so happy. And it was like a renaissance. Everything in my life changed. I started learning and be excited about life again. And right about that time, I got a new job. It wasn't any amazing job, but I went from being by myself, working all day as a delivery driver, which is what I had done for a year, to working with a lot of other people. And that was like the best thing for me, because now I could witness to people. Because, during the COVID era, if you're a delivery driver, people don't even want to talk to you. They don't want to, touch anything that you touched. So, it was like a very isolated, depressing job I had before. So anyways, I went to another job, and it was like God brought a lot of great experiences. And then it was just like one good thing after another happened to me. It wasn't right away that God gave me like financial blessings or health blessings, but my mind was what changed first. So, and then, it's not that I ever got perfect health or became rich or anything like that, but I was offered a job here in Tennessee, and I was very thankful to be moving to Tennessee instead of California. And the job was working at Adventist printing press, and so I was excited because I was originally converted by reading the Great Controversy. So in this press was going to be printing the Great Controversy. So I was really excited about that. And, oh man, there's so much to say, but let's see here. Let me read this here. Okay. The cross of Christ is to be lifted high above the people, absorbing their minds and concentrating their thoughts. Then all the spiritual faculties will be charged with divine power direct from God. Then there will be a concentration of the energies in genuine work for the Master. The workers will send forth to the world beams of light as living agencies to enlighten the earth. So I just want to tell you guys, if you lack any vision or joy in your life, I'm telling you, there is no way to look at the brightest spot in the universe an hour a day and not be enlightened. And that spot is Jesus Christ. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever, and he can help you in any situation. I don't care how bad it is. I feel like I know from personal experience. Okay. So we went to Tennessee. Well, right before we went to Tennessee, actually, someone reached out to me on Facebook, like sometimes happens. People, you've no idea who they are. This man was from Kenya. I knew one person in Kenya that I can think of, a friend actually from America who was there as a missionary. But in general, I didn't know people from Kenya. And he said he was a pastor. I just figured he was a Seventh-day Adventist pastor. But when I asked him, he said that he was a pastor of a Sunday-keeping church. And, I was very busy, and I thought, what have I in common with you? What do you want or what do you need? Because I just have nothing in common with you. But I told him, I challenged him about the seventh-day Sabbath, which is something I never do to people I don't know. But I don't know why I did that. I just said, have you ever thought about keeping the seventh-day Sabbath? And he said, yes, actually I have. I'm interested in it. And so I didn't even give him a Bible study. I just told him a little bit, and I actually sent some money to the Adventist publishing director in Kenya. And there, it's actually a lady, you can see her on the left there. And she went and delivered some Adventist books to this man. Well, anyways, to make a long story short, he was converted. He switched his little congregation to keeping the Sabbath. And so the experience was really good because the input that I gave was very small. Like I gave maybe $30 to help the publishing director travel from wherever her office was out there and give him like 3 books. So I was like, wow, this was so amazing. I spent $30, which is, small amount, and converted like 2/3 of a congregation. That was pretty amazing. And so, let's see here. Well, anyways, as I thought about this experience, it was a Friday afternoon, and we were about to visit my wife's aunt who was dying. And it was like God gave me this epiphany. It was like a spring coming to my mind. And I'm not saying it was anything prophetic or anything like that, but it was like one idea after another came into my mind pretty spontaneously over a few hours about how a small team of people could be formed to conduct soul-winning projects around the world. And so, anyways, I reached out to one of my friends. He was Ethiopian, but he lived in America. And I told him about it, and he's like, this is great. So we got about 6 people together, and we started a little team. We would use our money, and we were kind of putting this together, and I heard about in Ethiopia. There's a little picture from Ethiopia, that there was a big civil war, and there was like 6 million people starving to death. But at the same time, there were also the biggest Muslim to Adventist conversions like in the history of the Adventist church. And so I thought, God is doing something in Ethiopia, and I want to be a part. I thought, here we have our newly formed little team. And I told God one night, I want to focus on Ethiopia. Well, I didn't even tell my wife, and I didn't know anyone in Ethiopia. I mean, how am I supposed to get involved in Ethiopia? But the next day, I was on my lunch break at the printing press, and I was hurriedly trying to eat and do something else. It was a small little evangelistic hobby that I had. And then my phone rang, and it was someone calling me on Facebook, which I never get calls on Facebook. But anyways, they're from Ethiopia. It was an Adventist from Ethiopia. And they said, "Oh, I'm so glad to hear you and meet you." And I said, "Well, you have no idea." I said, I'm the one glad to meet you. Anyway, so that was our first contact in Ethiopia. And then from there, it's just blossomed. And we're still working in Ethiopia. Let's see what picture I have next. Well, anyways, as our team was thinking about all these things, this quote came to mind. And this is something that my wife and I had learned in Guatemala about giving like the Israelites had. So the Israelites, they had their tithes, they had their second tithe, they had these different offerings and things, and it all added up to, you can read here, it says, no less than 1/3 of their income was devoted to sacred and religious purposes. Whenever God's people in any period of the world have cheerfully and willingly carried out his plan in systematic benevolence and in gifts and offerings, they have realized the standing promise that prosperity should attend all their labors just in proportion as they obeyed his requirements. So, we had started practicing giving in addition, because, I'm actually quite stingy. I grew up very stingy. I gave a small amount of offerings. I gave my tithe, but, I just barely gave any offerings. Anyways, so when we heard this quote, it was a really game changer for us. And so if you have a second tithe, or if you pay a second tithe, which is basically offerings, right? We support the church with our tithes and offerings. But this was more than I'd ever given before. So when you have this money that you need to spend for good purposes, it's kind of fun because you can pick, mission project here, a missionary there. So anyways, our team I shared this with our team, and just as poor nobodies, we started kind of pooling our money, and we hired 2 people in Ethiopia. And let's see here. I have a hard time seeing, but anyways, this is one of them that we hired. But and they started doing gospel work, and I don't have time to explain much because we're running out of time fast. But okay. The worker on the left that you see there, we're actually transferring him from Kenya to Ethiopia because it's so much easier to find good quality workers in Kenya. And I don't have time to explain why that is, but okay. So anyways, basically our team started managing various projects, not just Ethiopia, but other countries and other projects, because the verse Daniel 12:3 says, "They that turn many to righteousness will shine as the stars forever and ever." But it doesn't say how to turn people to righteousness, right? You can use literature, you can use TV, radio, personal effort through Bible workers. And so, anyways, one of the things we've done is called digital Bible work. So typically how we and some others have done it is you can take a YouTube video and you can put it on Facebook, and you can pay Facebook to boost it, which is just a term for advertising. It's basically putting that post, that ad in front of a lot of people's eyes. And in the U.S., honestly, we don't click on ads, right? We hate ads. But in these other countries, they're like, they're more innocent, and they click on ads. So it's great for us because we can promote really great videos that speak like in their language. This is a new project we have. The Pura de Wali. It means bread and water in the language of the country of Georgia. So we found someone who's an Adventist here in America that produces great YouTube videos in a documentary style in the Georgian language. Well, to find someone like that is like a needle in a haystack, because there's only 3.7 million people in Georgia, and only a couple hundred are Adventists. And according to what I heard, most of them are older people. So anyways, we thought, well, let's take these videos from this man, and we'll sponsor them on Facebook. And then we were able to find someone who can act as a Bible worker in the country of Georgia that we can support for to work half-time for only like $150. So just amazing how God works these things out. Okay, so this is digital Bible work we've done before. This is like a screenshot from someone's phone. When they wake up in the morning, this is what their WhatsApp account looks like. It's like their text messages, right? Hundreds of messages. People saying, I watched this video, teach me more. And so it keeps these people hopping, like sometimes hundreds of messages a day. And keeping track of the people, to manage these different projects, it takes a lot of record keeping. Tracking their phone numbers, what study they're on. It's a lot. But anyways, this is a pastor from the country of Ghana who watched a video that was sponsored by another ministry, but our ministry had the digital Bible worker that followed up on it, and she converted to the Seventh-day Adventism, and her church came to Sabbath keeping as well. So if you want to see that video, you can ask me later. And you might wonder, how can you keep track of these things? Because we have about 20 workers in 7 countries and a lot of projects. And so we use Monday.com as part of how we manage the different tasks and things. So it's pretty neat. One last project that I'll talk about is the Great Controversy magazine, and it's something that we have here in the United States, actually. And I'll tell you how we started it, but it's a magazine, a small magazine, that takes the full text from the Great Controversy and then adds beautiful pictures and captions and timelines and things like that, because a lot of people today in America are afraid of reading a big book, right? If you hand them a big book, they're just like, I'm never going to read that. But these magazines, it's only one chapter, and you can sign up to receive it in the mail every month, kind of like a regular magazine, or you can order a bunch of copies of a certain chapter to give away in your neighborhood or something. So anyways, it's just, I love sharing this story because it just shows how God is alive and at work today. But when we first heard about this project, we saw the value. It was amazing, and it had been started in the Philippines, but it wasn't being produced in America. And we thought, we've got to do this. We've got to bring this to America. And then we got cold feet. We're like, there's no way we can pay for printing thousands of 42 different magazines. This is way bigger than us. So we thought, okay, let's see if we can give this project away to another ministry that has a lot of money. And so we approached another ministry, and they said it didn't really fit with their vision. We thought, oh no, how could that be? So we thought, we can't just abandon this project. It's so valuable. And so we decided to hold a meeting with the designer of the magazine and our team and pray about what God's will was for this. And so it was a Sunday evening. It's probably 8 o'clock in the evening, because that's 8 in the morning for the Philippines. And we had started the Zoom call, but no one was speaking yet. It was just that brief period, maybe 1 minute. And I heard a knock at the door. It was my wife. And I was about to lead out in the meeting, so it was a really bad time to get an interruption. But she was holding her cell phone, and she said, someone wants to talk to you right now. And I said, oh man. So I forgot to mute my call because I was already on the Zoom call. But I took her phone, and there was a man on the other line that said, I've been wrestling with God all day, and I've finally given in. He said, I'm getting into my truck right now to drive to your house. Oh, I forgot to tell you. I always do this. On the table in front of us, we had a quote for printing the first 10,000 magazines, and it was $5,500. And we didn't have that much money. And anyways, the man on the phone said, I'm getting into my truck right now to drive to your house. And he showed up during our meeting with $5,000 cash. And he didn't know, he didn't know about our meeting. He didn't know that we needed $5,500 for those first 10,000 magazines. But anyways, when our team heard that, we were speechless. We said, God wants us to do this project. So God has helped us every month to print another chapter. And so we keep up with our amount of subscribers. And so God is so good. He's amazing. So this is our team today. We have a few volunteers, we have board members, we have 20 workers in the different countries. So I just praise God. And yeah, we do produce a mission video every month. So if you want afterwards, you can tell me and I can sign you up. We can text you or email you a link to the video every month if you want. That's just a great way to hear what's going on and see the amazing stories that God's doing. But I just want to make one kind of appeal here. I believe God gave me this experience as a perfect sermon illustration, but it's not something that happened to someone else. It wasn't something that I got online. It was something that happened to me last year in Harriman, Tennessee. I went off an off-ramp from I-40, and I passed this white van, but there was just like a little bit of like steam coming up from the hood, and I didn't see anyone around the van. I actually didn't even stop. I went past, but as I drove past, I saw a small fire on the ground underneath the engine, and I thought, oh wow, well that is pretty serious, but I didn't see anyone there, so I thought, well, you know, maybe they had left the van there and it's not, anyways, but I knew it was pretty serious, so I quickly parked my car at the bottom of the off-ramp. I got out my cell phone and dialed 911, and I ran all the way back to the van, and as I was running, there was a man next to me in reverse doing the same thing. But by the time we got to the van, which couldn't have been more than about 60 seconds, I don't know, maybe 90 seconds or something, the flames had engulfed the whole engine compartment and were coming out of the hood, licking the glass, the windshield. Well, we run up, and horror of horrors, there was a lady inside the van. But the van was locked. And so I stare in the van, and the lady is awake and alert, but she's not getting out. And we're like pounding on the van. We're telling her to get out of the van, but she didn't do anything. She was just looking at us. And it was the eeriest thing I've ever had in my life. It was the most intense time I've ever experienced. And so we're like I was talking to 911, but I realized if we wait for 911 to get there, she's going to be dead. And so I wasn't responding to the 911 operator, and I think they hung up on me. Well, we're trying to break into the van, and it wasn't working. I mean, even a policeman was there, and he couldn't break in at first. I mean, he was smashing the van with his nightstick, but wasn't breaking the glass. It was the eeriest thing. It felt like there was a curse hanging over the air. Anyways, I praise God that someone broke in the van, and the lady was pulled out, fell on the ground, seconds, a minute before it exploded in flames like you see here. I took that picture. But that is a almost perfect illustration of what this world is in right now. The situation that people are in is that this world that we're on is headed to the fires of the last days, and most people are fairly unconcerned. They're not giving their spiritual health and realities the priority that they should. They may worry about their job or whatever, but they're not focused on the huge, great controversy in front of them. And so God is calling for you, because this lady, she was maybe out of her mind due to some mental condition. Maybe she had a stroke. I mean, she was alert, looking around, but something obviously wasn't quite clicking for her. But as Seventh-day Adventists, you know the truth. We know the truth. We know what's going to happen to this world, and God is calling on us to be His first responders all around the world. That's the commission, right? And so I just leave it with you that God has a vision for your life. It doesn't take talent, skill, or money, but you can do a lot for God. And we hope that our story encourages you that it's the truth.
Amazing. Amazing. And we don't even know those kinds of things are even going on sometimes around us. And so thank you, Eric and Amanda, for coming and sharing with us. And so at this time, I would like if Robert and and Ron, if you guys could just get and we could take up a love offering for them, just for their travel expenses, at least to get here today. And we just thank them so much for being willing to come and to share. And what an awesome ministry that they are doing, and this team. And it's not just here, but it's around the world. That's what's amazing to me, is the fact that it's all around the world. And so we just thank you for that. And we just pray that God will continue to richly bless your ministry as you continue to, reach out to people.